I will also be doing body painting in the back at the end. So sign up. The circle of life. One morning a few months ago, as I was headed out back to piss, I came across a pair of bumblebees fucking on the back porch. I was headed to piss in my usual spot next to the garage. There's a weed over there that I've been pissing on for about the last year. Used to be about 3 or 4 feet tall, but now it's just a little nub. That makes me really satisfied. I have to piss out there because the toilets are all fucked up at my dad's house. We still shit inside, but we have to pour water from a bucket down under the toilet to flush, so we try to only use it for shitting. The bumblebees were on the ground just a few feet from the back door, and I almost crushed them when I walked out through the sliding glass doors. But they didn't notice me. They just kept right on fucking as if I wasn't even there. They were doing it doggy style. The male was standing on his back 2 legs, grabbing the female's abdomen with his front 4 legs. She was standing on all 6s, dutifully taking his thrusts. There was no gyrating or buzzing or anything. Actually, it was less like sex and more like insemination. It reminded me of the sex I used to have with my ex-girlfriend. Specifically the point in our relationship when we tried to conceive a child. At that point in our relationship, we'd reached a sort of deep denial phase, and having a kid seemed like it might provide a reasonable excuse to stay together. But it never took, and the phase only lasted for about 6 months until she suddenly changed her mind one day and got an IUD without consulting me. We still dated for another year after that, but sex was never the same. We met at a party in college. When she first saw me, I was sulking in the corner because I'd missed out on the pizza, and no one had thought to save me any. She later told me that she liked me because I reminded her of a schnauzer. I liked her because she was basically the first girl who had ever given me the time of day. I'd been with other girls, but I'd never had a real relationship. The longest relationship I'd ever had before her lasted only 3 months. I blame my father for this because when I was 16, he took me to a brothel over off of Telephone Road and made me sleep with this prostitute. It was like sleeping with someone's mom. She was probably only 40 or so, but she might as well have been 80. Picture the scene in The Shining. It really fucked me up. My dad used to drink a lot back then. He's a different person today. Of course, my ex was blissfully unaware of all this crap when we met, and I was able to charm her with my encyclopedic knowledge of Seinfeld. And we ended up dating for at least almost 6 years. For her, long relationships with emotionally stunted men was something of a pattern. The relationship she was in before us had lasted 2 years, and she only broke it off with him when she found a pair of her own mother's underwear in his sock drawer. There were plenty of other red flags, but she disregarded those along the way, and this one really sealed the deal. It turned out he had taken them when she had invited him over for Thanksgiving. She said that he had reminded her of a basset hound, and she just had this thing for lost puppies. It was her kryptonite. I thought this was a clever turn of phrase until I saw the picture of the guy, and he really looked like a basset hound. Sort of big and droopy. And then it made me really concerned that I might actually look like a schnauzer. My friends told me I didn't, but I think they might have been lying. But that morning, when I saw the bumblebees, I was completely taken. I even forgot that I had to piss for a few minutes, and I really had to piss. I crouched there watching them, almost in a trance. It was such a beautiful, intimate scene. I felt really lucky to have stumbled upon it, but it also felt like, to really make the moment count, I should probably get stoned. And even though it was a weekday and I was trying not to wake and bake on weekdays, I felt like this moment really called for it. So I first ran to piss at the garage, then ran back inside to get the bong. I was really worried they'd finish before I got back, but they didn't. They were still plowing away, the male thrusting over and over at a remarkably even pace, the female motionless except for the faintest quiver of her abdomen when he would thrust into her. I wonder what sex for bumblebees feels like, I thought to myself after I'd taken the hellacious bong rip. Do they feel pleasure? Or is it all just instinct? I know from my own experiences that the boundary between those things is more tenuous than most of us generally think. That it's actually possible to enjoy sex without pleasure. In fact, sometimes that can be the most enjoyable sex there is. About 3 years into our relationship, I stopped being able to come during sex. The only way I would finish was if she watched me jerk off while I stood next to the bed. Needless to say, she wasn't very thrilled with this development. For me, it was as if I had spent my whole life trying not to come. And then almost overnight, it became this massive struggle. At first, I thought that it was because I was watching too much porn, so I cut out the porn, mostly. But nothing changed. Then we figured that maybe our sex life was too boring. So we tried some kinky stuff. Ropes, dirty talk, vibrators. She even peed on me one time. But none of it seemed to really have any effect. Then, to save our doomed relationship, we decided to try and conceive a child. And somehow, that decision made it possible for me to start coming again. The sex was unlike any other sex I've had before or since. It was without love, or pleasure, or desire. It was the least sensual sex I'd ever experienced, almost pure instinct. No emotions at all, really, just purpose. We fucked on a schedule. We did it in the same way, strictly missionary, every time. And we didn't hardly even look at each other. And when I would try to speak, she'd shush me. Sex became one more routine thing to do before going to bed, like brushing our teeth. And I had never enjoyed it more. We took all the spontaneity out of our sex life, made it super boring, basically just turned it into insemination. And I was finally able to jizz again. I was elated. I even quit smoking weed. But it made her nervous. She said it was a confusing emotion for her. She'd been focused on helping me to come, that she would have expected to be happy. But in reality, she was scared. It turned out she didn't think we'd ever actually be able to conceive, or on account of the fact that I could only come from jerking off. But since somehow the act of trying to conceive a child had made my balls come to life, and the prospect of a child seemed like a real thing to her all of a sudden, she felt freaked out. That's why she went and got the IUD. She waited for almost 2 months after she got it to tell me about it, because she didn't want to ruin the sex for me. But once she told me, it was like a switch went off in my nutsack, and I've had trouble jizzing ever since. What is love? I asked myself as I watched the bees go at it for another 20 minutes. They seriously fucked for like a solid half hour. It was incredible. Is love lots of really strong feelings? Lots of deep and meaningful expressions of devotion and intense physical connection? I think that's the image I've always had of love growing up. A sort of manic romantic love. But maybe I've been wrong all my life in thinking that love means lots of strong feelings, when what it really means is no feelings at all. Not even while fucking. The last time I saw my ex was at a wedding of a mutual friend last year. She was with her husband and baby. They live in Austin. He's a lawyer, something dreadful. She's a school teacher. It's all very quaint. When I met him, it was clear she hadn't told him anything about me. He asked me how we knew each other, and I just said, we met in college. I wanted to tell him all the nasty things we'd done together, but none of that would have mattered to him. He had the kid. He won, son of a bitch. It didn't matter what kind of kinky shit we did. They did the kinkiest thing of all. They bred. I thought about that as I watched the male bee standing there after they'd finished fucking. She flew away immediately when it was over, but he just stood there for a while, panting, his little legs quivering, exhausted. I could identify with that posture. I'd been there myself before. Good job, little guy. I said that to him. He looked up at me, gave me a quick wink and a thumbs up. Then he flew off to find new flowers to stick his little dong in. Thank you.